Okay, and I believe we are a go. Okay, let's get into it then. Welcome everybody. Doing weekly guided meditations. My name is Mike Sattel. We're going to do some sitting together. I'm going to be providing some guided instruction, a little bit of theory, a little bit of Buddhist psychology. The title, I believe, for this one is going to be Abiding in Selfing and Non-Selfing. It's always one of these questions that we hear come up often in Buddhism. Is there a self? Is there not a self? Is there, what is the nature and experience of non-selfing, of emptiness, all of this sort of thing? Um, so, where the question is, how should we say, a little complex. And a little context dependent. Um, there are definitely times and places where I feel a very strong, rigid, inflexible sense of self. Yeah, sometimes if I'm being accused or threatened, or if I'm deeply attached to an idea that I'm defending, there's definitely a strong sense of I am that is attached to that. And there are moments where that sense of I am is rather attenuated. If I'm out in nature, hiking in a forest, hiking in the desert, or engaged in some activity that I'm enjoying, there's a very little sense of self that happens. So, over the course of the day, our sense of I am tends to constantly be in flux if we bother to notice that. Um, where I find this useful is those times when I'm very much gripping onto a sense of I am that may be, at the core of it, attached to some anger, some fear, some sadness, etc. Where there's that core dukkha, that core discontent, is really the impetus for the self arising. So there's a bit of, how shall we say, practicality in knowing how to let go, and in what ways to let go, to let go and relinquish that particular expression of self, that particular expression of I am that is wrapped and attached to a form of dukkha, a form of suffering. So, what I'd like to play around with today is just doing that, not necessarily needing to have a large, inflexible experience of your own personality view in the moment. But what we're going to do is we're just going to look at the thoughts and feelings that give rise to a sense of I am, and what it's like when that comes to rest, or if we can create the conditions for rest to arise. What remains? What is the experience of that? What does that taste like, so to speak? So, without further ado, let's just get into the set, and we can then afterwards look back on what we did. So, allow yourself to come to a comfortable upright position. Okay, straightening up and settling in. Just take a moment or two to acknowledge what you're bringing in with you, how that's showing up in your body right now. If you're sitting upright, whether sitting on the floor or sitting on the chair, it's good to have the spine upright, free floating as it were, as though one vertebrae is resting upon another. And there's a little string at the top of the head pulling ever so slightly upwards, allowing the shoulders to drop back. Maybe the chin to come towards the chest a little. The more still we can have the body, the more we can notice the more comparatively subtle experiences. So, part of this right now is a little bit of effort in maintaining a good, healthy posture. And part of this is a discernment of just what is present. And part of this experience is a bit of grace, allowing yourself to just accept however the body is right now, be it pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, and however the mind is right now. As we're looking upon this experience, can we have a little bit more kindness, a little bit more acceptance of whatever is? As we begin to deliberately move our attention towards the shamatha object. That is to say, anything that you would like to rest your attention upon that is relatively consistently available. And ideally something that might be on the neutral to pleasant scale. That is to say, when we look upon it, rest our attention on it, there's something maybe pleasant about it. That our attention would like to rest upon it. Because something pleasant arises from attuning to it in this way. I'll be giving instruction on the breath for starters. So placing your attention on some part of the body that's actively engaged in breathing, be it the nose, throat, lungs, solar plexus, belly, whatever feels appropriate for you. And attend to the air entering and exiting the body as discerned by this part of the body. And the more that we can notice anything on the neutral to pleasant field tones that are available from attuning to the breath in this way, the more our attention is inclined to affirm itself. The more our intention is inclined to anchor itself to the shamatha object. So giving yourself permission to enjoy whatever is pleasant. Sometimes on that first half of the breath, there's more energizing, invigorating qualities available that can help with the alertness, uprightness. And sometimes available on that second part of the breath, that exhale and base of the out breath, the more relinquishing relaxation response. Whatever it is for you, notice and give yourself permission to feel. And of course, as we're attempting to attune to the breath in this fashion, the thoughts and feelings are happening in the background. Maybe from time to time they slip into the foreground. That's okay, perfectly normal. Let's expand the scope of focus to include this activity as well. So we're still having the locus of our attention on the breath, but more of this peripheral awareness can notice what may be active right now. Feelings in the body can rise and pass. Images inside the mind's eye associated with thinking can rise and pass. Internal talk between the ears can generate narrative stories, commentaries. That can also rise and pass. So, still primarily being with the breath, but just lightly noticing moment by moment whether the seeing, hearing, feeling is either active or restful. That is to say, it's generating content, or from time to time, it's quiet, restful, nothing happening. We don't do anything about it except accept it. Have equanimity with whatever expression of activation or rest presents itself. If feelings arise or thoughts arise, just allow it. Notice any moments of craving or aversion that could be linked to these events. Just relinquish, let go. Notice every time you fall into some process of thinking, there's a quality of I am. There's a quality of a narrative taking place. And at the core of it, there's some experience of the self, generating a view, an opinion, an experience. And when those features are restful, just appreciate the quiet. Okay, good. So let's a little bit more deliberately explore the opportunities for rest states. Moment by moment, in the mind's eye, that region, that images arise associated with planning fantasy daydream. Moment by moment, there may be opportunities for rest. Nothing's happening. It's just simple blankness behind the eyes, a blankness behind the eyelids. It can be a darkness, a brightness, if your eyes are closed. If your eyes are open, just notice that there's no images competing. That's an expression of sea rest. Moment by moment, there may be quiet in between the ears, an absence of commentary, an absence of dialogue, an absence of monologue. Just quiet in between the ears. It's a moment of hear rest. And from moment to moment in the body, there may be restful sensations. Whether that's restful as neutrality or relaxation or relinquishing or letting go, or just pleasantly soothing sensations. Whatever is restful for you. Just acknowledge the feel rest when it occurs. So, moment by moment, noticing the see rest, hear rest, feel rest as it happens. And as it happens, we appreciate it. Appreciate the quietness, the lack of activation. If you would like to use those labels, it could sound something like this: see rest, see and feel rest, hear rest, all three, and so on like that. Or you could just quietly note whatever feels appropriate. We're not trying to force anything or strive for anything. So if there's active happening, that's fine. Just allow that to be in the background. I'm trying to prioritize, noticing of emptying out, noticing of the rest states. So discerning the rest states when they occur, noticing them. And noticing of this rest states, we can notice this ground out of which thoughts and feelings emerge. And discerning, noticing the emptying out that's taking place. We can cultivate this appreciation, and equanimity. Relinquishing, noticing anything that your attention wants to grasp onto. Just let that go. Let that go. Appreciating the rest states as they arise. And relating to them in a way where we can relinquish any want to stimulate them into activation. Relinquishing any craving or aversion helps us to continue to abide in this fashion to the next moment and to the next moment. And abiding in this way, we can notice and we can appreciate the emptying out. As the thoughts attenuate, thin out, are released, the emotive reactivity quiets down. There may be a simplicity of experience. I'm sitting here having a pleasant abiding in breath and body in the space around you, with no need to generate a personality view. We could recognize and appreciate an emptying out of stress, an emptying out of reactivity. And appreciate abiding in this simpler form. If you care to, we can drop those techniques of any labeling or specific noting. We can open up to a more broader peripheral awareness. The environment around you, the spaciousness around you, the spaciousness within you. This spaciousness can be vast, open, pliant, receptive, giving, compassionate. There still may be little bits of self-referencing that still occur. But just like the sounds in the environment around you, that may arise and pass away in various locations. There may be thoughts that just rise and pass away, associated with the location where you sit. But they're to be regarded in the same way. They're not distractions. They're just features of this living environment around you, within you. Every moment of sensory contact yields a sense of greater equanimity, acceptance, allowing. part of it is appreciating the qualities of emptying out, of emptiness, of non selfing, of this spacious awareness. And part of it can be the noticing of the metta that may be available as the personality view thinned out and awareness broadens. Can we imbue this space with qualities of metta? Maybe they need to be generated, or maybe we notice what is inherently already present and available. But within this experience, can there be a little bit more kindness or tuning to the kindness that's available? And is there available in this spaciousness any qualities of compassion? Compassion towards any of the unpleasant that may be discerned, or maybe qualities of tenderness directed towards this locus that is experiencing. Imbuing space with compassion. discerning the presence of appreciative joy. The mind liberated from the shackles of craving and aversion experiences an inherent appreciative joy, appreciating that which is pleasant about abiding in spaciousness, and giving yourself permission to feel, imbuing spaciousness with an appreciative joy. And discerning the presence of equanimity, a deep sense of acceptance, allowing, yielding, letting go of any need to facilitate, influence, or control on the meditation, but allowing it to do you. A deep acceptance, allowing, yielding into this present moment. Noticing what are the boundaries of the body like in this present moment, just discerning that a little bit. Where do you end and spaciousness begin? Appreciating spaciousness, allowing attention to rest where it rests, in breath, and however the body manifests or doesn't, and however spaciousness reveals itself. Okay, at ease. So we started off with the shamatha object, that is to say, we placing our attention on something that is um, continuously available for our attention to rest upon so that it can ground and stabilize itself. And the more that we can notice the restful qualities, it facilitates an overall calm abiding, as well as sharpening concentration or facilitating an absorption of concentration, whatever connotation resonates with you. And we began qualities of the mind and body doing its thing, the thinking and feeling, and just observing how, when that occurs, if there's a self view, a personality view that shows up. A personality view is a term often used in Buddhism. Um, describes the experience of the self arising. Yeah. So it's a view, a sense of I am forming an opinion, a perception, etc. We began to notice moment by moment within the thinking feeling experiences how it can kind of turn off and on. You know, moments there would be activation, moments it would be restful. Then we began to turn our attention towards the rest states in particular. So when we were noticing the rest states, appreciating the rest states, we can begin to start to get a flavor of um, well, if the mind is quiet and the body is restful, what remains? If personality view is not being triggered, if there's no real narrative being created in the mind, there's no emotive reactivity, there's no clinging, there's no fixation happening, what remains? And so we're exploring the groundedness of the body, with the thinning out of the body, as well as the thinning out of the mind, yet with a honing of attention. So we can appreciate the rest, we can appreciate the absence of self view arising, and we can appreciate the non origination. There's no originating, there's no creating of an I am, there's no stress within that experience. So, this knowledge of emptiness in this way and appreciating it. Sometimes, for some people, if the ordering process of self and world begins to thin out or shift or change, it can be a little um, odd, to say the least. Some people might find that unpleasant. So I feel that it's good training for people, and particularly in the beginning, that as they are entering into practices that may emphasize or spotlight an attenuation of the ordering process of self and world, a thinning out of a sense of self, that if they're engaging in those practices, that they're also engaged in generating of metta. You know, if the kindness, compassion qualities of appreciative joy and equanimity are present, then the more that self begins to move away. From time to time, the mind may become fearful of that, and it wants to have some sort of ground to stabilize itself, to reify itself. If we can have a good stream of metta going, that reduces the fear, it gives us a sense of a continuity of experience and at times a ground to rest upon. So, different ways of looking at the ground. When there's the see, hear, feel, rest, and just resting our attention on that, we're noticing the ground of the being out of which these things can arise and return. And in the generating of metta, we're creating somewhat of a ground in this way, something to help stabilize uh, uh, um, our deep mind's need to have some sort of orientation. So that's pretty much what we did and what we're exploring. Um, just looking at chats, if there's any questions or reflections. Any questions or reflections? Feel free to ask or type. No need though. if nothing rises. So again, this sense of view. We hear this often in particularly in Theravada Buddhism, when they talk about the Eightfold Path. Right view is one of the path factors that they talk about. Sometimes the right view conversation can go in different directions, but what is I find very relevant to today's sitting is, in contrast, the wrong view is going through life experiencing yourself as a solid and separate entity that is constantly being bombarded with stress. And as a result, reacts in deeply ingrained reactive patterns of anger, fear, sadness, resentment, etc. That is referred to as wrong view. And unfortunately, that's how most of us live our lives. Right view in this context is being able to view the sensory experience as it arises through the lens of the Four Noble Truths. So, as we are making sensory contact with something, whether it's internally generated or externally expressed or externally generated, to be able to discern the presence of the origination of any of that stress or dukkha. How is it arising? On what sense front is it arising? Is there some degree of craving or aversion that is um, making our attention fixate on that origination of stress? The more that we can become clear about how that stress is arising or originating, through what sense gates, how we're experiencing it, can we completely be with that experience, drop the tendency to grip, grasp, fixate, but instead have sufficient equanimity and allowance for that sensory wave to rise and pass? We can create the conditions where we can notice the cessation, the letting go, the fading away and relinquishing of our grasping onto whatever that sensory component is that we are forming a stressed self-reaction. So in that way, it's right view, because it sets us up to be able to move through life experiencing moment by moment all of the sensory data that's arising in a way that inclines us towards liberation. That is to say, liberation being unfixated, unshackled, decoupled from qualities of stress and suffering. So we have the liberated mind, open, bright, clear, gladdened, and balanced in that respect. So just another reflection on view. Okay, so I think that about does it for today. So thank you very much for coming out. We can end with a dedication of merit. By the merits of these acts and other such virtues, may we attain a liberation for the benefit of all beings. We bow before those that come before us, after us, and to those who walk beside us on the path. Okay, thank you so much. Hope to see you next time around.